our Tip Tuesday. You guys are loving our Tip Tuesday, just really quick tutorials, not even tutorials, they're just really quick informational videos to help you along your path of wreath making. So I've got Mr. Jasper is over here in his little bed. He's my little Yorkie. He likes to come and keep me company. But as soon as I start talking to myself, which he thinks is to myself, he goes and he gets down in his little bed and he just snuggles up. So if you are new to the page, welcome. I'm Julie Samaco, owner of Southern Charm Wreaths, where we make beautiful wreaths and teach you how to make and sell them. I've been in business for over 10 years now, and I run it out of my wreath workshop, which is here, but it's AKA my garage of my home. So everything is designed and created here in the garage of my home. We've converted this into a little studio for my wreath making business, which I'm so happy that my family is letting me do that and have some of the space. I thought today for our Tip Tuesday, we'd talk about wire. That's something that always trips up people. There's so many different wires out there, and so I thought I'd just come on here and talk to you a little bit about wire. If you're interested in wire, this one is for you. Let me know if you are interested in another Tip Tuesday tutorial. Give me, just comment below something you might be interested in learning more about. I will be glad to come on here and work it into my Tip Tuesday schedule for you. And if you're watching new on Southern Charm Wreaths, my Facebook page, make sure to give me a follow if you like these tutorials. We also do home decor tutorials. And then if you're watching the replay over on YouTube, give me a subscribe over there and click the bell icon. So let's get started. I've got all my wire out. This is all of the wire that I use. I'm pretty sure this is all the wire I use. I went through and I was like pulling from all of the places. But this is all of the wire that I use. And let me just do a little zoom. If you like these tutorials, make sure to head over to southerncharmwreaths.com for more information. And you can catch up on old tutorials that we've done. So southerncharmwreaths.com. So we've got several different types of wire. The first thing that you might be more used to seeing in craft stores is the paddle wire. I was looking for the one, that's all wrapped on a long paddle, and I don't think I have it. I did at one point. Who knows where it got to. But this is also a form of paddle wire. So this is, I got this stuff at Hobby Lobby. It has the little cutter right there on it. So it's really good to use. And it's especially good when you're trying to make a wreath that you're trying to wrap stems around a wire frame and you really just don't want to cut the wire. So I feel like these paddle wires are really good. These are about 24 gauge. And they come in different colors. So for Christmas, you can find them in red, you can find them in gold, silver. The other thing that we have are other wires that you might see are wires like this, where it comes in a big rope. This is wrapped in, is it paper? I don't know, it may be, I don't think it's paper. It's some type of paper, but it's not paper, if that makes sense. I mean, I could get this wet and it wouldn't disintegrate. But this is a roping it's just wrapped around so the wire is wrapped. This is really good. I like to use this for my door hangers, to make the hanger on the wreath. These are perfect for grapevine wreaths. If you want to add more grapevine to it, securing grapevine, maybe your grapevine's too loose or what have you, you can use this. It really blends in. It comes in also a green, which is perfect if you're doing an evergreen wreath, that are really popular for Christmas time. So this is another type of wire that you might see frequently in your craft stores, okay? So again, these are good for securing additional items to a grapevine wreath, or maybe adding more grapevine to a wreath, or to create your hangers if you want them to blend and look really professional. This wire is a little bit less known in our wreath industry. However, it's very popular in the florist industry. This is bind wire, B-I-N-D, bind wire. This is paper wrapped wire that is perfect for tying off bows. It's good for adding additional items to your wreath. I like to use it to secure stems when I'm creating lantern swags, or if I need to add ornaments or anything like that onto a wreath. This is just a really good wire to use. I love it. Just remember, if you ever get it, I got this from Amazon, I think, but you can get it also if you buy wholesale florist stuff. You would be able to find it there too. But just to remember, when you go to use it, you want to pull from the inside and not take off the tape. If you take off the tape, it tends to unravel the whole thing, and so you're going to want to pull it from the top out. So those are really like the rope wires and the paddle wires. I love the colors that you can use. For the paddle wires, I like to tie off my deco mesh sometimes on the bottom. Sometimes I just really need some decorative wire around an ornament. Maybe I want to hide the hanger on an ornament, or I want to add an element to a plush, gnome in the wreath or something like that. So sometimes color is just using it to your advantage. The color enhances the item, but it also adds security as well. All right, and then the other type of wire we have is our stem wire. So the stem wire are these wires that are, green, that they come long, I guess about 18 inches or so. They're long. This is called stem wire or florist wire, and I prefer working with this versus pipe cleaner. You can use pipe cleaner for a lot of things, and sometimes the stem wire is interchangeable with the florist wire, but sometimes I feel like florist wire is just a lot easier to use than a pipe cleaner, okay? So then with the stem wire, they come in different versions as well. We have the green stem wire. Told you I'm in my garage. And then we also have, this is a fabric wrapped wire. So we've got, there's some that come already pre-wrapped, which is really good. The reason you're going to want to use the wrapped wire is if you're trying to secure foam onto a grapevine wreath, or you're trying to secure foam where you need additional wires, say like on a wreath saddle, not a wreath saddle, but a grave saddle, then the wires that is wrapped is really good, so it prevents it from pulling through and cutting through the foam, if that makes sense. Here is a stem wire that's wrapped in paper. So this is just a brown paper and it's wrapped. So you can see that there's different versions of the stem wire. The other thing we have is, this is wire that is a metallic, or it's not a metallic, it's an aluminum wire. It comes in various colors. So this is a fuchsia or a magenta color, but they've got it in green and pink and blue and burgundy, and this is really good when you want to add decorative touches to an arrangement. Sometimes these are really good for florists when you're trying to make maybe a bridal bouquet and you want to wrap something around to bind it with all of the flowers together. So this is just a really good wire. It's aluminum and it comes in multiple colors, okay? So that's pretty much the wire that I use for my making. And let me talk about the gauges, okay? Because that's where a lot of people get very confused, because that's one of the things that when I first started was very hard for me to grasp, because it was it felt like the opposite of what it should be. In other words, the thinner, the smaller the gauge, I'm sorry, I've said that wrong. The higher the gauge, the thinner the wire, all right? So let me say that again. The higher the gauge, the thinner the wire. So to me, that feels like it should be the opposite. It should be the opposite, but it's not. So try to remember that. The thinner the wire, the higher the gauge. The higher the gauge, the thinner the wire. All right, so working our way up. So this would be the thinner the gauge. These would be very thin gauges. So these are going to be the higher gauge number. So even though this didn't have a gauge on it, I looked for the wrapping. This is the thinnest that I have here on the table. This, I estimate this to be a 28 or even a 26 inch, not inch, 28 or 26 gauge wire wrapped in paper. It's just very, very thin. So this to me is the thinnest. Then we move to our paddle wires. Our paddle wires are 24 gauge. All right, so this is going to be a 24 gauge, 24 gauge, 24 gauge. You could probably find some 22 gauge wire if that's good. If you like using paddle wire, personally, I prefer 22 gauge for my Florist wire. But you know, sometimes it's a little harder to find a 22 gauge and a paddle. The other thing too is that, so here's my favorite one that I like to use is the 22 gauge. So these are, to me, this is just enough gauge to wrap around a bow. It's thin enough that I can work with it, and it's thick enough that, you know, my fatter fingers, or if you have arthritis or something like that, it's enough for you to grab onto, versus a 28 or 26 gauge is just really thin in my opinion. So I like using 22 gauge is kind of my go-to that I like to use. The other one that I also use is a 20 gauge right here. So that you can see this is a 20 gauge. It's a little thicker. So when I go to bend it, it takes a little bit more of an effort. All right, so this is the 20 gauge and this is the 22 gauge. So you can see a little bit of a difference, the thickness. So there is definitely a thickness. If I hold it here, this one is thicker. All right, this one's thicker. The 20 gauge is thicker. So we're moving down, remember. So the lower the gauge, the thicker the number. The higher the gauge, the thinner. The higher the gauge, the thinner the wire. Then we've got the 16 gauge, okay? So that was the 16, no, this is the 16 gauge that I took out. I think both of the, no, this is 16. I haven't taken it out. So the 16 gauge is a little bit thicker. To me, this is good for using when you want to wire ornaments on. I think this is, you know, this is really good for wiring ornaments. I don't really feel like it's necessary if you have the 22 gauge, but sometimes if you need just a little bit thicker wire, the 20 gauge is good. This is also, this rustic wire is a 20 gauge, so that's a little thicker wire for you. Great for making door hangers on the back of your wreaths. Then we have our 18 gauge. So this is thicker right here. So you can see it's taken a little bit more effort to get through. So this is the 18 gauge. And then the highest that I have in the Florist stem is 16 gauge. So this is really, really thick. I would not use this on a bow. There's just no way that you could get a secure and tight twist on this because it just takes so much effort to twist it. You know, I just can't even get a really tight twist up at the point. So this is the 16-inch gauge. These are good for when you want to include something in your silk flower arrangements that, let's say you want to have an ornament stick on there, but it's upside down in an arrangement. You can have this is good for that. So anytime you need some really good stability on a stem, you could also wire your stems to a 16-inch gauge wire and gives a little bit more stability. And then the aluminum is 12 gauge. So this is a little bit, this is a little thicker than that. Again, this is just for adding decorative touches to anything that you might need to do, like wedding work or adding a little bit more of an element to your wreaths in the way of color. So again, these are all of the wire gauges that I use in my Wreath of the Month Club group, making my wreaths. These are really the gauges of the wires that I go to the most. And then 22 is the one I really just stock up on because I can really make a tight bow with this. I hope you liked this Tip Tuesday. If you have any questions, let me know. But if you just remember, the higher the gauge, the thinner the wire. Okay, the higher the gauge, the thinner the wire. So, and if you like these tip tutorials, make sure to go over to my website, southerncharmwreaths.com. For more of these, we've got a lot of them over there. We've got how to make wreaths and arrangements and things like that. So head over to southerncharmwreaths.com. If you're watching the replay, also over on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and over there as well. Bye, guys. Thanks for joining me.